Good afternoon. Today is Sunday, February 14th, 2021. We're told that Odin hung upon a windy tree and took up the runes with a spear in his side. And then, after 9 nights, he fell back screeching, took up those runes. Is that true? Is that what happened? Or does that sound very Abrahamic? Hanging on a windy tree with a spear in his side, like the fictional Jesus carrying his crossbeam, which was hung on a living tree, because they're saying that now it may not have been a cross, but just a beam that he carried and then was hung on a living tree. And then he was stabbed in the side and vinegar and water comes out, just like a pregnant woman. Well, we covered that in our book, Northern Paganism, Exposing Abraham, why blood and water come out of the pregnant woman on the cross. But that's a digression. So, did Odin hang upon a windy tree for 9 nights and then fall back screeching and take up the runes? Is that true? But partially. And I'm going to explain why. You got to remember from the last video. Remember, our globe, I don't have a cauldron big enough, so I use the miniature size and different color globe. This is the globe, okay? As I explained, this is Mimir's well, full of water, or folk soul. It is Mimir's well. It is also called Fen, dark water, Soul Lear. I also pointed out how Odin is the spirit of the bear that passes through the fires of blood month, harvest, all the way through till spring, red month. Vor, for order, the beginning of the northern pagan year. The spirit of the bear, Odin's eye, is hidden in that well. I covered all of that in the last video. So what are these runes that Odin, according to them, hung upon a windy tree for 9 nights? You see, he didn't hang upon a windy tree. He clung to a mast of a tree. The runes are the constellations. The runes are the constellations during the 9 lunar months that the spirit of Odin winds upon the mast. Remember, Freya gives her wake-up call to pregnant Brynhild. Wakey, wakey, young maiden. And then to wind upon the mast and bring us Valhalla. Valhalla, the cauldron of the great bear, from whence rebirth takes place when it's directly overhead in spring. So these constellations or runes, we've covered this in our book, Northern Paganism, the runes. These runes would be painted all on the inside of Fen Solir, like writing on the wall. And then you have the globe turning. Globe turns, giving it the appearance that the tree is turning. The globe spins. This remains steady. That's why Nova answers the question. It says, while I do pass overhead, I am not flying. The stanza which covers this. We put this into Northern Paganism, Exposing Abraham. It's Havamal stanza 139. Not only do we put that stanza in there, but we put down the breakdown so you can see how it's supposed to correctly be translated, which we do. Okay, so the stanza says, does not say he hung on a windy tree. It says, no I cling to, winding upward upon the mast, winding bring us Valhalla. 9 entire nights, gory wounded, in Odin given, self oneself greater. Upon that mast, which nobody knows, of his every root runs. So that no I cling to. Okay, vitk at hik. The hik is to cling like a bear. Like, where is he? The bear. Just like our bear in nature, when it climbs a tree, it clings to the mast of that tree, the trunk of that tree, the trunk of the world tree. Odin is the spirit of the bear, clinging to the trunk of the tree. And as the globe spins, he winds up the mast until he gets directly overhead of where we are. And that is spring. Our lore also says that Odin taught Freya the runes, and Freya taught Odin magic. Now, why would that be? Because when Odin is in play, Freya, who represents, among other things, fertility. In the Northlands, there's nothing fertile. Everything is frozen. So Freya is not in play. Freya comes into play in spring when winter nights, when night, Odin is swallowed by Fenrir. So fertility returns and Odin goes away. He falls back, but he's taken up the runes for 9 nights, for 9 lunar months, just like Sleipnir has 8 legs in one position of the rider. 9. Odin, the spirit of Odin, as he's passing through the fire, there's 9 lunar cycles, and the constellations that are in play are his runes for 9 nights. Taken up by Odin, spring comes, he falls back. There is a marriage between the runes and astrology that is being missed by having Odin hang upon a windy tree with a spear in his side, which, I mean, some of the artistic renditions are pretty good. They're just not accurate for what God Odin represents upon that mast. And we know it's a mast because it's in the stanza, in the Old Norse. It says, "No I cling to, vindja mithia." Okay, vindja, winding, to ring, to wind upwards. Mithi is a pole, a tree, or a mast. It's the center beam. It's the famous roof beam. It's the trunk of the tree. So he is clinging to this winding upward mast of a tree. The gory wounded. Is Balder bleeding? He's passing through the fires. So I said it's partially true. How is it partially true? Well, the skull. During this time, you know what vegetarian neo-pagan would have been called in the days of our northern pagan ancestors? A corpse. Because all winter long, there was no vegetables to eat. You ate bear, you ate deer to stay alive. You ate elk, moose, caribou. You ate meat to stay alive. That was your source of nutrition. And it was up to the hero hunter to bring that nutrition in. When the bear was hunted, and this is Odin's wild hunt, this all ties together. Odin's wild hunt, the hunt for the bear. When the bear was hunted, it was a feast. It was a huge feast. That's part of our culture. That's what Christianity stole when they made Thanksgiving and then Christmas, all these feast times. Our northern pagan times. There's massive celebrations. So the families would get together, and the bear would be brought in by the hero with great celebration. As a matter of fact, the Kalevala calls it the wedding feast. The wedding feast. There was another wedding feast where water was turned into wine. Ah, the night sky. Water. Wintertime, horizon red, wine. A wedding feast. So the bear is brought in and the bear is consumed. Every part of that bear is used. The bones are not broken in the bear because the bones represent life. Thor doesn't have goats, he has 2 bear. It's in our books. The legs were kept with the skull. The skull represents memory. The memory, just like in Mimir's well. This was in honor of the spirit of the bear, Odin, the wild hunt. Now the skull and those bones were wrapped. If they didn't need the hide, they were wrapped back in the hide. If they did need the hide to stay warm, cold northern winters, they would use a linen. They would decorate the skull. This is part of where carving pumpkins comes from for Samhain. And they would take that, Baba Yaga unveiled, they would take that skull and bones and they would carry it up into the Udales, into the groves, into the holy northern lands. And they would hang that upon a sapling tree. Not any sapling tree. A sapling fir tree that they had planted over the grave of a recently deceased ancestor. Remember, the yew tree represents eternal life, the eternal soul. So you have a valiant ancestor that passes away. They would bury him. They'd pass, or her. They'd plant a sapling yew tree over the grave. If they were married couples, then it would be side by side. So when those yew trees would grow, it would resemble the hero who is eternally linked to the Valkyrie, Sigurd and Brynhild. Never going to be separated. That bear was hung on that tree. That bear represents what? It represents valiancy, Valhalla. So, in one aspect, Odin, the spirit of Odin, with that skull and leg bones being hung onto that little sapling tree, that little tree is going to be a windy tree up there in the northern lands. When the north winds blow in the wintertime, that tree is going to be blowing around. So, in one regard, yes, hung on a windy tree, but not the way it's meant with taking up the runes. See, that is not applicable. That is a rite, a funeral rite, an honoring, not only of the ancestor that passed, your kin, but also of the ancestral bear that passed, your kin. Those 2 valiant spirits linked. And then in spring, when our ancestors, following the cycles of the bear, would give birth to their young, and then the bear would come out of hibernation with her cubs, rebirth, a reincarnation. The deceased from Valhalla was reincarnated into the young, born in that spring. So these groves, which Christianity and Islam targeted and hewed down, these were akin to their burial grounds. They came in and desecrated our holy places. What did they look like? Well, we give a description of what a grove is like, but these skull and bones would have been hung all around. You would have been walking into sacred land, sacred burial grounds of your kin, both the bear and your human ancestor. Painted up in various ways, decorated, treated with honor. So, when we hear that Odin hung upon a windy tree, that is not referencing those burial grounds of our ancestral bear hanging upon a sapling yew tree. It is referencing that Odin is clinging to, just like a bear clinging to a tree, the mast of the world tree, a yew tree, as the globe spins. And after 9 lunar cycles, Odin has the runes for 9 lunar nights. And then, when spring happens, what happens to the Bear constellation, the Great Bear constellation? It falls to the northern horizon, to the rocky rest bed, to the Thulian seat, the heathen altar. In the Kalevala, and on this point I'll close. In the Kalevala, it also says, and this shows the attention to the constellations, to astrology, to the runes that was paid, that has been lost to a certain degree today. It says that newly married maidens are advised, when they go to begin their own house, that when the tail of the bear points north, it's time to start the fires. Now, without any inkling about the constellations or the movement of the Great Bear, Ursa Major, you'd be puzzled. When does the bear's tail point north? The bear's tail is going to point north every time the bear turns around in a different direction. Talking about the constellation. Because you see, in autumn, when Freya gives her wake-up call to pregnant Brynhild, and the bear comes off the altar, the tail is pointing north. Autumn. Temperatures drop. Start the fires. So that's Odin taking up the runes for 9 lunar nights. And he clung to a winding tree. Took up the constellations during those 9 lunar months. Till next time, or tils nästa gång, good hälsa.